Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. I've asked Andrew McIlwain. He is the Managing Director of Investigator Resources. The ASX code is IVR. I really like Investigator Resources because, first of all, they're in South Australia. Secondly, it's silver, one of my favourite commodities. And thirdly, I just think timing, it's all in the timing. And these guys have done the work, getting on with it, just done a cap raise, which we'll talk about. But Andrew understands what he's got his hands on. We haven't spoken for quite a while, actually. So I've asked Andrew to come back on and give us an update, tell us what they're up to down there in South Australia. Andrew, great to see you. Thanks for coming back onto Small Caps.
Oh, Kerry, great to see you, and great to be back and talking about something I'm fairly passionate about.
Yes, I know you are passionate about this. And there's the project behind you. For those that might not know, give us a brief overview of who are Investigator, and then we'll get into some detail.
Sure, and look, and I'll make reference to what's behind me because the picture does tell 1,000 words. But Investigator is ASX listed, as you said. Its primary focus is in South Australia. We have quite a large landholding in South Australia, over 8,500 square kilometres. Our significant and principal asset is the Paris Silver Project, discovered in 2011, a project that we've taken through, completed a PFS on last year, and we've been moving forward to complete a DFS. We've got work happening on the ground. I'll talk about that in a bit of detail. So we've got some great exploration also outside Paris.
All right, so thank you. That's it looks to me like there's not a lot out there, maybe a few goats running around the place, but doesn't look like there's any issues. However, I would like to just ask you one thing. It looks quite barren. What's your water situation out there? Because I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if you were to get into mining, don't you need a little bit of water?
Well, if you're sort of the same age as I, you'd probably refer to it as Gilligan's Island, no light, no motor car. So it is that case. It is a little bit stranded. We have a trafficable road within a few kilometres of the project. And as we move forward to production, we'd have to improve that road. There is no natural water source out there, and there's certainly no power. So they're the impediments to production. But on the power side, great opportunity for renewables. Great part of central South Australia for solar power generation. We do have an identified water source that's about 10 k's away. Water's within 5 metres of the surface. That's something we're doing in the DFS, where we have permitted now. We'll drill and test those water bores and prove up the water source for production. As I said, it might be a little remote. There's far more remote places, but it's a great opportunity where we don't have any community challenges. It's not arable farmland. As you said, we'll displace a few wild goats, and there's no watershed. And I've had some battles with projects I've developed in high rainfall areas. There's no watershed. There's no water catchments here. So from the point of view of taking this project forward, it's a pretty simple permitting process.
It's been a while since I've chatted to you, Andrew. So what have you been doing in 2022? I want to know what's been happening this year as we go into, because I'm talking to you, it's almost Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. So for all of you out there, Merry Christmas. What have you been doing in 22?
Well, I've just been getting a Christmas present ready for Investigator shareholders, actually. But apart from that, we have had a very busy year. We kicked off this year, middle of January. We were back drilling. We drilled at a project called Morgans, which is about 80 kilometres to the east of us. Great silver intersection, great zinc intersections as well. I've got to remember now, 24 of 27 holes in the first program hit mineralisation. So that was a really successful program. We'll be back out drilling that again next year. We also stepped out from Paris, and it's sort of, I'm trying to say, it's about up here over my left shoulder, about 5 kilometres away. We've got a project, a prospect we call Apollo. We drilled there and had the best silver intersection outside the Paris project earlier this year. We also, like accidental heroes, there was some rare earths in the upper parts of those holes. We're not chasing rare earths. We're doing some test work to see whether they're metallurgically recoverable. But in fact, we've prepared now to, part of the work we're doing this year is getting ready to go back out and start drilling there next year. Lots of other metallurgical test work happening in the background, doing the final crushing grinding test work for the Paris process plant. So that's not particularly sort of newsworthy. but we're ticking the boxes as we advance through to DFS. And as you mentioned, we raised $4.2 million announced that on Wednesday morning. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we had a clear pathway or a clear runway for the work that we have planned next year. So with plenty of cash, we'll start the year with $7 or $8 million cash in the bank, and lots of work that's been in the planning in 2022 that will execute in 2023.
Well, as you said, lots of money in the bank. Can you just explain where the majority of that funds will be going? Is it going on more drilling at Paris, or majority on regional? What are you doing with it? What are the plans for that? Because it was $4 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And look, one of the key opportunities, and I've sort of passed by this. There was a restricted area at the end of Paris, which had been acknowledged by us and the traditional owners that we would keep away from it.
Okay.
It truncated the Paris resource. We hadn't been able to drill in that area. It was on the southern area. It's actually just underneath where I'm sitting here in this background.
Right.
And we recognised an opportunity if we were able to work with the traditional owners, which we have over the last 2 or 3 years. They've gone through their process. Anthropologists have been out to visit, and this is men's country generally out here. And without water, they acknowledged that it's unlikely that it was ever used for ceremonial purposes. So an area that was precluded from us has been opened up, and we're actually now drilling the next 200-metre extension to the Paris resource. So people ask me how many ounces is that going to add? Don't know, but 25 metres away we have good grade silver intersections. We're drilling next to it now. And we'll have results from that drilling starting to come through late January next year.
So drilling's already happening there. Was there a reason why you weren't allowed access to it and now suddenly you've got it? Because it seems to me like it was a hard stop at a certain point and now you can get in there.
Way back in 2012, when they did one of the original heritage surveys over the area, there were 2 small mounds, and I'm not sort of overstating it. It was, a couple of metres high of sort of a quartz scree. We identified it. We took the traditional owners there. They said, look, this might be of some significance to us. And we just put 100-metre buffer zones around them and kept out of it. As we got to understand what was important for the traditional owners and they got to understand how we went about our business, we went back and started having a discussion about the opportunity that was presented. And we worked with them, we cleared the area, and they were very happy for us to now get in and start to explore that. There was no cost really associated with accessing that area with the agreements we've signed. They did warn us they're coming once we want to go into production, but as I said, the relationship with the Gawler Rangers group is very good. So it always been hard up against it. We hadn't been able to drill, and if you look at any of our plans, you can see there was a line where we stopped. That's now been removed, and we're looking at the extension to the Paris resource, which is also part of the reason we actually slowed down quietly the definitive feasibility study, because we expect we'll add to the resource. That will increase the mineable reserve, that will increase the mine life, and has a huge impact on the final DFS numbers. So we'll recalculate a resource next year once we finish this drilling, and that will feed into the DFS.
How long's the drill? When do you start? Did you say you're starting in January?
No, we've been drilling all of December. We got the clearance about middle of November. We were there 2 weeks later drilling. We'll drill right up till Christmas, and then we'll be back. We've got another couple of weeks drilling at Paris in January, and then we'll move over to Apollo, which is the place 4 kilometres away.
Up there?
And we'll start drilling there, chasing up what's around this great silver intersection. It's about 8 metres at 1,200 grams or something like that. If that was in gold terms, it's 3 or 4 grams of gold equivalent, or more. So great intersection. We're not quite sure what might be around it, so we'll be back out. And that's also the thing that adds value to this project is satellite opportunities to bring resource to the Paris plant.
Andrew, why is this area such a good area for silver? And is there anything? I mean, you mentioned rare earths briefly, and that's not a focus for you. Great, by the way, because everybody seems to have rare earths. They're not that rare anymore. Why do you think this area is so prolific for silver?
I'll just make one comment about you're right, rare earths aren't that rare, but having recoverable rare earths, economically recoverable rare earths is very rare. We've got our samples in the ANSTO lab at the moment being tested to see, in fact, whether there's a simple process of recovery. Some of them will need pH of, some projects need a pH of 1, which is really extreme. So till we work out whether we've got a girl or a boy and whether those are recoverable rare earths, that's sort of a byplay for us. But we're back out. If I knew the answer to why silver occurred where it is, and there's been lots of theories postulated about it, we'd be drilling more accurately probably.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of an anomaly. There's lots of different geology in the region. As we move further north, we're up against the Uno Fault, which is really a determining structure. The Gawler Range of volcanics to the north of that. Look, we're not sure. We've got 6 prospects just on that Paris tenement, or the Peter Lambo tenement. We've drilled 5 of them. We have another one further to the east. We're going to drill again. So still life in the old girl yet.
How deep is the drilling been to date?
We drill typically to about 150 metres. One of the things that we know is there's a dolomite basement to this mineralisation. The top part of the dolomite's mineralised. Once we get through that, we don't go any further. So generally, I think the deepest drilling is probably a couple of 100 metres. What we're drilling at the moment, I think there's a couple of 180-metre holes. The rest is all about 150. And importantly, we know, as I said, 25 metres away, we know where the mineralisation is. It's 112 metres deep. So that's what we're looking for next door to it. So, but having said that, there's some other structures we'll drill deeper around them. So,
is this, as a starter, is this going to be an open pit operation out there?
Very much so, and it's unlikely that it would go underground. As I said, it has this basement. It runs from the north to the south. It's the mineralisation's at surface at the north, and look, you can see in the background there's no particular outcrops. It's a sandy material. In fact, we think about 70% of the open pit will be able to just rip and dig. It won't need drilling and blasting. It's that incompetent.
Wow.
The material, which is a great benefit for us from mine cost perspective. But yeah, certainly open pit. Some of the other, and it's been a busy year. I forget some of the things. We've actually been back and we did a series of geotechnical drilling around the pit. So we've been able to we will be able to better plan pit wall angles and things like that as we go forward.
So going forward into 2023, and I guess what I'm looking for is the value add, if you like, for those that are listening that are current shareholders and those that might be looking at Investigator as, I guess, almost a proxy to the silver price, but also what's happening in 23? When are you going to get into production? Is there still a lot more drilling to be done? Give us an overview and a bit more detail.
So look, I suppose there's a couple of very significant value adds, but I've always referred to the fact that if we see a silver price that's north of $30 Australian an ounce, we're heading down the path of this as quite an achievable, financeable project. Silver tipped over $35 this morning. I see lots of stuff across my desk that suggests it's going north rather than south. It's surprising that it hasn't moved more quickly given some of the unrest in the Ukraine and so on. But I'm not going to get into world economics. But the other aspect is the gold silver ratio we refer to is simply the artifact or the metric of the relationship between the silver price and the gold price, and it's currently about 85. Historically, and people know more about it than I said, it should be 65. If that happened to reset to 65 today, the silver price would be over $40 Australian. So big difference. And what makes that reset? Not quite sure, except that the supply-demand thematic in the background of silver has changed quite dramatically with the push for decarbonisation and electrification, and everything needs a bit of silver in it. Your mobile phone needs some silver in it. Your electric vehicle's got 2 ounces. Your solar panel has got 1 ounce of silver in it. And in fact, the consumption of silver this year has gone up by 16% year on year. So
quite substantial.
So the Silver Institute are suggesting that 2022 will consume 1.2 billion ounces of silver. There's only 900 million mined each year. So that supply-demand consumption deficit is going to grow. We expect to see silver price move with that. Getting off the economic side of it, I think one of the key aspects for us is we presented in the PFS a really simple story. Silver mined, silver bars, off to the mint, where we go. there's $300 million worth of lead in that resource that conceptually in the PFS went through the processing plant. It was mined, went through the processing plant and went to the tails. And so we just wanted to present a really simple project. What we're doing at the moment and some of the capital we've raised will go towards metallurgical work to work out the best route to recover that lead. It's a bit difficult. It's not a galena that just jumps out of the ground. It's a little harder to recover, a little harder to make a really high quality concentrate. But the beauty for us is Port Pirie is only 300 kilometres down the road, and so the concentrate doesn't have to be able to support transport around the world to a smelter. So we see, could we get half of that? If we can get an extra $150 million of lead out of this, huge uplift to the project economics.
Speaking of the project economics, can you talk to any of that at the moment, or is it too soon?
It's probably too soon, and I'm happy to say I do present in my presentations, which are on our website, the PFS numbers. And look, the really simple one was we ran the PFS on $34 an ounce, and I always talk about Australian dollars. $34 an ounce. The all-in sustaining cost to produce was $17.50. So we had a margin there of 45%. So what's changed in the 18 months is obviously labour, fuel, construction costs will have increased. So we haven't recalculated that. That's an exercise that we'll present at the end of the DFS. There's a few things that weren't in the PFS that we think can mitigate some of those, but we're not quite sure but how much difference it will be in the end.
Andrew, when do you expect and again, I'm pushing you a little bit here, but obviously getting into production means cash flow, means no more needing to do capital raises. Have you got a sort of an indicative time frame of when you think that you'll turn this from an exploration play into development and then production?
Sure. So look, 2023 is going to be technical DFS work. We expect to finish the DFS in 2023. There's a whole range of things that run in parallel with that, other native title negotiations and so on. And in 2024, we'll be lodging our application for a mining licence. That goes into the regulatory malaise, and we're not quite sure. There's a commitment as to how long that might take. Look, fortunately, we're well known in the South Australian Department. We've been around for a little while. We've got a really credible and prominent chairman in Richard Hillis now, who's well regarded in South Australia. And we also have a case manager assigned to the project already from within the department. So the concept is that our case managers should be pulling the application through as well as us pushing from the other side. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. Said the community challenges here, the environmental challenges are negligible. So I think it'll slide through. 2024 will be set approvals and financing, and I'd like to think that we start construction in 2024, which means production in 2025. It's only a 10 or 11 month construction window.
I think your timing could be pretty interesting as well, Andrew, given the fact that, as you say, more and more of us need. Whether it be a mobile phone or solar farms or solar on people's roofs, all of this is going to need silver, and that gap between supply and demand is widening. So timing-wise, I think it's good, very, very good timing for you. Is this the highest grade silver project in Australia? Is that right?
Oh, I forgot to mention that, did I? Absolutely it is. By an order of it's 2 and 3 times the grade of our peers. Having said that, they generally have a base metal component as well, and we have less so. But a primary silver project, highest grade by far. So interesting, just a snippet you mentioned about solar panels. An unfortunate fact that not a lot of people know is that there's 2 aspects to a solar panel. It has a useful life of about 10 years, and the second part is it's very difficult to recycle it.
Yeah.
There's no economic means of recycling whatever might be in, and there's some nasties in solar panels, but certainly getting the silver out isn't easy. Most solar panels after their 10-year life are going to landfill. So, the consumption that we see in silver going into solar panels isn't necessarily going to slow down in 10 years as they start, because they don't get recycled.
It's a really good point, because everyone talks about let's all go solar, but that their lifespan is not that long, and then they cannot be recycled. Well,
Yeah,
certainly
that's
not at the
right.
moment. Now, it would be remiss of me to finish off without mentioning you've gone into tungsten. Now, is that right? Or is that?
Yeah, sure. No need to scratch your head. It's okay. It's I've been quite. When I got involved in Investigator a number of years ago, I said I wanted to look for another project to ensure that we had some diversification and we weren't beholden just to Paris and the silver price. You'd appreciate better than most. There are no high margin cheap gold mines around, and we wanted to stay in the precious metal. And there's been a few acquisitions that we looked at, and in a couple we were thankfully the losing bidder. But a little bit of my background is I ran a tungsten project in Spain for a couple of years, and I've also had 15 years of experience in the Northern Territory. So when the Molyhil tungsten project sort of came across our desk, and we'd known about, I knew about it from my tungsten days. Quite a high grade, relatively, it's not similar to Paris in some respects. Small project, reasonably easy to permit. It's about 250 kilometres northeast of Alice Springs, almost a sealed road to the gate. No power, no water, so not dissimilar. But one of the things, and if you look at what's happening with critical minerals demand, and certainly the focus on critical minerals, nickel and others get sort of a fair sort of airing, but tungsten and silver is tucked away in that. And there's a whole range of things that we think that we can bring to the table to assist in taking that project forward. Apart from my experience, and one of the key things in tungsten is the offtake agreement and how you deal with that, and how, what you can actually get back in revenue. And I've dealt with a number of the sort of principal sort of consumers around the world previously. But there's a number of initiatives, Northern Territory Jobs Fund, there's a Critical Minerals Fund, there's NAIF, all of which we think can assist in taking this project forward. Spent a lot of time talking about something that we're only going to spend $1 million over the next 18 months assessing the viability of the project. It did have a DFS presented in about 2018, 2019. It has molybdenum credits. Molybdenum price is nearly 3 times what it was then. So we'll work out over the next 18 months whether how we want to take this project forward. But for $1 million, we end up owning 25% of it, 40% of the tenement beside it. So it's a great sort of great position to have in a critical minerals prospect.
In terms of focus going forward into 23, 24, how much focus will be on Molyhil?
5 and 95.
5 and 95. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask around the other way, but principal focus is on taking Paris forward. As I said, I can get a bit driven about things, but this project's at a point where we need to really light the fire under it. As I said, we would have been further advanced if we hadn't waited for access to this area at the end of the pit. It's critical to the economics of it. And as I said, credit to everyone that we're able to get access to that, and we're drilling that now. And that's going to be pretty exciting to see what comes out of it.
Well, so that news will be coming forward next year, so you better come back and have a chat with me then. Andrew, we're running out of time, my friend. Can you give me 3 reasons why you think now is a pivotal time for people to sit up and take notice of Investigator Resources?
Yeah, look, sure. I didn't talk about anything outside those 2 projects, but we've got substantial exploration ground right from the west to the east. We've farmed some out to other companies. We've got Gold Road, who are farming into our copper prospective tenements in the Stuart Shelf. Right out to the east, near Broken Hill, we've had some ground that we've not been able to get access to for a long time. I started negotiation there with the traditional owner group in February 2019, and we signed a deal with them a month ago. That opens up the Curnamona to us. It's a great gold, copper opportunity out there. So we've not talked about that because we've not been able to get access. We flew a drone aeromagnetic survey there last week. So there'll be some news out of the eastern side of the state as well as out of Paris. So we've got other things happening, but we have a lot of focus on adding ounces and lifting the Paris project forward. That was a quick first one. Second one, certainly, we're going to be, as I said, driving Paris forward, and there's going to be news flow about the steps that we take as we don't think it's particularly newsworthy when we've drilled a water bore, but it's a critical part of taking the project forward to development.
And the third one?
I knew you were going to ask, remind me of the third one. The third one is if you want exposure to silver, you've got to have Investigator in your portfolio. If you look at our share price, we just in lockstep with the silver price. So the silver price, everyone's suggesting it's going to move forward. It has started to move over the last month. It wasn't necessarily why we raised money at the time, but we have enough cash that we're able to now sort of execute our plans in 2023 and we give everybody great silver exposure.
Well, as we said, it is the highest grade silver project in Australia. They're now at the pointy end, getting into production. Andrew's doing all the boring stuff that happens before they get into production. Not that far away, as I speak to Andrew, at the end of 2022, heading into 2023. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news going forward into 23. We'll make sure that we keep you updated here on Small Caps. Andrew McIlwain, Investigator Resources, thanks so much for joining me today.
Kerry, my pleasure. Have a great Christmas, everyone.